Hello everybody, welcome back to Queens Avenue Tarot. I'm Barbara, and we are reviewing Michael Cohen's book, Disloyal. The true story of the former personal attorney to President Donald J. Trump. Hey, I did it. Today we are going to do Chapter 14, Hurricane Stormy Part 2. This is kind of a long chapter, so I don't know if I'll be able to get through it in 30 minutes, but I'm going to try. So anyway, let's see here. Okay, so during this period of time, pretty much towards the end of the campaign, one of Michael's chief task was to raise money, and he did. He made a lot of money, millions upon millions. So he also came up with a way to reach out to minority voters. And then he was really getting pissed off about how all the people on CNN were calling Trump a racist and, they were telling the truth, Islamophobe. And anyway, it was getting on his nerves. And so what he did was he called up this old friend of his who was a pastor, a black African-American pastor, and got with him and asked him if he would support Trump or say something about him or whatever. So his name was Darrell Scott. He's a leading African-American figure in Cleveland. So he wanted to pray on it, and the next day he called back, and he said that he would do it, but that he wanted Michael with him. And and it was because Michael was white. So anyway, what they were trying to do is take this horrible, horrible man and make him look God-fearing and transform him into a good guy. It was just a pack of lies. Okay, so another thing, he made friends with diamonds and silk, okay? Michael did. Okay, and the other thing is that all these red hats that went out at Trump Tower with Trump's supposed signature on them, Trump didn't sign those. The secretary signed them. So soon Michael was helping Diamond and Silk get on, I guess they're a YouTube influencer. They're YouTube influencers. And he was helping him get, in the mainstream media like, Fox and that kind of thing. So he says, to my eternal shame, that was a quote, he spoke to the assemblance at the New Spirit Revival Center in Ohio, and he said he doesn't remember how many times he has lied, and he's lost track of how many times the media has lied about how horrible Donald Trump is. And all the names that people were calling him, like sexist, racist, narcissist, blah, blah, blah. And so the crowd laughed. And also Trump was sitting on the days behind him with Mike Pence and Mike Flynn. And then they would sit there and go, he's right, Trump's a good guy. So anyway, the crowd was delighted and in agreement. And so, the other thing he did that was really, he feels really bad about, is that he said, as the son of a Holocaust survivor. So he used his family's personal tragic past to promote this, to promote Trump. Okay, so and he said, no, he's not a racist, and he believes that all people are the same. So, then he's talking about Jim Jones and how he also drank the Kool-Aid and because he believed his own bullshit. And, he says that cults are able to exist because the leader believes all this crap in his sick little head. So, and then Jared Kushner was another guy from a Jewish family. His grandparents were Holocaust. One of his grandparents was a Holocaust survivor, and he didn't say a word when Trump stood around and talked about immigrants. So Michael told lie after lie praising Trump. He knew they were dishonest. Yeah, he stooped so low to invoke the plight of my own ancestors in Eastern Europe. He calls it horse shit. What he did was horse shit, and he says he actually believed himself at the time, but he willfully turned a blind eye to all of it, and even though he had all kinds of red alert signals not to do this. Okay, so at the end of the event, there was all this laying on of hands, by all these preachers, and Michael was one of them that laid on hands on Trump, and they were treating him like he was some god or something, and it was, as Trump would say, bullshit. Michael says he was totally out of his mind. Okay, so by the spring of 2016, God, the campaign, the GOP campaign was down to Trump and Ted Cruz. So Michael took another lesson at the Trump University of Sleaze and Deception, and he helped manufacture what really was fake news. And that is, he was working with the National Enquirer and David Pecker. This is the magazine that you see, all those magazines that you see at the grocery store at checkout, that's first A, in my opinion, sucker bait. Because you're standing there in line, you have nothing to do, you see something that grabs your attention, and it's always lies. Okay, so, that's what they do. And every grocery store in the country has them. Well, maybe Fresh Market doesn't. Whole Foods probably doesn't, but I don't know. Okay, so they called up Pecker again because Pecker called him. And he said that he told Michael that he had a photograph of Ted Cruz's father with Lee Harvey Oswald, who is the guy who killed President Kennedy, okay? And so, and it was total slander. But they needed a scandal to get one over on Cruz. So Pecker said that they had a photo of Oswald and Rafael Cruz, Ted's father, having lunch. And in reality, you couldn't tell who, it was clearly Oswald, but you could not tell who that was having lunch with him. The picture wasn't clear, so, but you put it out there and say it's Rafael Cruz and everybody believed him. So, he asked Trump, let's see. Yeah, he asked Pecker, do you know that that's Cruz's father? Pecker says, does it matter? These guys are horrible. Okay, so obviously you guys know that Cruz's father was Cuban born and he's an American citizen, I think. I think his mother was Canadian. So Pecker does a mock-up, and they're saying the story was ridiculous, but they loved it. The boss loved it. But it was the kind of lie that was right up Trump's alley. Okay, and the Enquirer did all kinds of hit pieces on Trump's opponent. Like they said, Ben Carson, who was really a neurosurgeon, left a sponge inside the brain of a patient. And Marco Rubio, apparently, they said he had a cocaine problem, and that Fioroni's daughter, is that how you say it? Carly Fiorina, her daughter was a drug addict. And it was all bullshit, you guys. I mean, these were the worst rumors and bullshit conspiracy theories. So they would come up with some crazy storylines that pretty much, he says, came right out of their ass. And then they were saying that Cruz was cheating on his wife, and they had no proof whatsoever. And they had court-certified witnesses, secret U.S. government files proving this was true. It was not true. And so he walked in on Michael went into Trump's office, and he heard Trump talking to a reporter saying that he was bad-mouthing Cruz's wife and saying that, and he was comparing Cruz's wife's, I don't know her name, looks to Melania's. And so he was pretty much shameless on the verbal attacks about this, just like he was with Clinton. And what he was doing was projecting. That's his trick. If he's guilty of something, he's going to accuse someone else of doing it. Okay, so Cruz's father was a preacher. He came out and said that everybody needed to vote for Trump's opponent, his son, because otherwise it would be the destruction of America. And Trump said, I think it's absolutely horrible that you can go make stuff up like that. And so then Michael took the picture of Cruz and, Lee Harvey Oswald with this, nobody knows who it is, but told Trump it was Cruz's father, and Trump said, is this for real? And Michael says, looks real to me. That's all they cared about. And they also, at this point, knew that he was going to lose. So then the Indiana primary came up, and that story was on the front page of the Inquirer, but nobody picked it up. So Trump went on Fox and Friends and was bitching about nobody taking this seriously. And then they did. Then they started writing about it. Worked like a charm. Cruz lost Indiana 53-37. Michael calls it gangster. Okay, so now Michael's talking about that he's watching the rally. Let's see, where is he? One of Trump's rallies on television. And he noticed that every person behind Trump was white. And so it was Michael's idea, you need to get some different colors in the background. You need black and brown and Asian people in the background. And so they paid them. They were actors. And he also tried to convince women in these swing states that Hillary Clinton was so bad that they might as well just stay home, and they did. And they always had at least one or two black men and women, or brown, directly behind Trump so that it would show up on the cameras. And they were the only ones there. And the whole reason that these people wanted Trump to win was because they knew that Trump would be able to probably put in some Supreme Court justices. Well, they knew you could do at least one because of the Mitch McConnell debacle with Merrick Garland and not letting Obama put in somebody the last year in office, which was total bullshit too. So they had an open seat, and the evangelical right, hey, my whole neighborhood is full of people that think that way. And, these people are my friends and I love them. But their deal is that they want abortion made illegal, period. That's their deal. So anyway, Trump won with women. He says, I love women. I love winning with women. He won the nomination. Okay, so this is when the stories about all those, 25 or 6 people started coming out, and while he was married to Melania. And okay, so this is where this guy, Dylan Howard, who works for the Inquirer, who was the real bad guy about coming up with, outlandish titles for these stories. But a Playboy centerfold, Karen McDougal, who actually was, I think, the most popular Playboy centerfold of all time, apparently, at the time. And they had already paid off Stormy. They already had a non-disclosure agreement from Stormy Daniels. I don't remember if they paid her or not. No, because maybe she was married at the time or something. But what happened was they had a letter from, I remember I told you guys this. They had a letter from both Trump and Stormy Daniels saying that never happened. They both, I don't know why she said that. Maybe she was married at the time, or I don't know why. But anyway. But now here she's coming back up in the picture, and this all happened with Karen McDougal and Stormy Daniels at a time when Melania is breastfeeding her new son. And at this point, they're thinking, yeah, she was one of the most popular centerfolds of all time. And at this point, they were thinking it didn't matter if the girls were lying or not, because the truth didn't matter. If it got out there, it doesn't have to be a lie, or it doesn't have to be the truth. If people believed it, they believed it. And they didn't want this to jeopardize the campaign at that point. But so this is like June 27, and Michael goes 16. Michael goes into the office and tells him about McDougal. And see, he actually had an affair with this girl. It wasn't a one-night stand. They saw each other. She actually really thought that he was going to leave his wife for her. How stupid is that, right? But now she's trying to revive her career, whatever's left of it. She is really a pretty girl. So McDougal wanted $150,000 with $25,000 of that allocated to go to, $25,000 of it was to pay her to be on the cover of 2 magazines owned by American media. So that meant that Trump had to pay $125,000. And he totally, okay, so everything Trump did like this, down to his clothing, was taxed. And this was a big tax, like the plane rides, the dinners, even clothes, was a huge tax deduction. So, they figured out a way to go around it so that it wouldn't look like it was coming out of Trump's pocket by creating some shell company in Maryland, I think. So, and so now his poll numbers were rising, and he was often, accusing others, like I said before, accusing others of the exact same things that he did. It's like if you cheated or lied, you could be sure that if Trump's accusing you of doing that, he had done it. Okay, so Pecker ended up getting stiffed for that 125. This was the deal that was taped, where Michael, at this point, Michael's like, I think I'm going to record this, and so he did, and that's the one we all heard about, But that was the 150 or 125 that Trump stiffed David Pecker for. And so they incorporated an LLC in Delaware. Okay, so deal with Delaware is they have very strict secrecy laws. And so this is where rich guys can go open shell companies that wives can't find, so they don't really know how much assets their husband have. And then, so they get divorced, and the wives can't find their money. Because I know one thing about men who have money and cheat on their wives, they don't want to give you half of it, period. And then, he had another cheap attack, and doesn't think the law or rules apply to him, and he stiffed David Pecker. So, okay, so then Michael went to London to visit his daughter because she was going to school there. They went with like several other couples whose kids were in school in England. And during dinner, of course, he got a phone call. It was Hope Hicks, and this was when the Access Hollywood tape came out, and Hope was like 25 years old. Okay, remember what I said yesterday, or maybe I didn't say this out loud, but somebody asked me why Hope Hicks would go out with Corey Lewandowski. I don't know if this is the truth about Hope, but I will say from people I know and my experience that when you have low self-esteem, when you don't feel good about yourself, you'll let anybody tell you anything. You know, when you feel unloved, when you maybe have been abused, I'm not saying that she was, but she might have been bullied by somebody. And she had a very low, somebody made her feel bad about herself. That's why she has low self-esteem, okay? It's my opinion. So that's when, she was having this affair with Corey Lewandowski, the loser, and she was way over her head. So now he had to work on this latest scandal. Paul Ryan, at this time, denounced him. And this is when the Republicans started to jump ship, okay? So anyway, Mike knew that he had to kill this because he didn't want Trump to lose in a landslide. And he was trying to hide Trump's true nature. That was his job. And he was doing dirty deeds and truly undemocratic and dangerous deeds. Okay, so now Pecker comes back and says Stormy is back with her manager and she's out shopping the story. And Michael's like, what story? We already had that. And, I have a letter saying that it never happened. She signed it. And he said, well, whatever. Now she needs money, see? So she wants, they dicker back and forth, and she ends up getting, and she took a lie detector test this time. So she ends up, they negotiated. She ends up wanting $130. And Donald decided that, yeah, go ahead and pay. But they still didn't want it to look like Trump paid. So they had to find a roundabout way again to pay Stormy Daniels the $130,000. And Trump was not the kind of guy who had friends he could go to and borrow money. He didn't have. Narcissists don't have friends. Narcissists have people around them that they can use, and once they're done using these people, once they can no longer get any benefits from having people around, they dump them. So anyway, Michael paid it. He had a line of credit. He took it out of there, and I'm watching the time here. Stormy wanted to clear $100,000, and her manager wanted $15,000, and the lawyer wanted $15,000. That's where they came up with the $130,000. And the way that Michael got him to do it was, he said, it's not a lot of money for somebody as rich as you are. And Trump, lived for flattery. So that's when he said, okay, well, we can't forget about, we don't want it to go upstairs, meaning to Melania. And he just doesn't pay these kind of things. And Michael says here he's never ever drank any alcohol in his whole life. And Trump also doesn't drink, really. He really doesn't. That's one thing that he doesn't lie about. Michael calls this whole thing a clusterfuck. And so the Access Hollywood tape they were calling Pussy Grab Gate. And they knew if he lost, it would turn into a historical embarrassment that he would carry around for the rest of his life. Stormy, by the way, was in these two movies, her high points. And the films were called Revenge of the Dildos and Big Boob Bonanza. And so Michael, in order to get him to pay, said just because it's not true doesn't mean it can't hurt you. So their whole modus operandi is deny, 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 accuse, 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 never admit weakness. And then Trump says it's only $130,000. Fuck it, Michael, pay her. But then Michael took it out of his money. And that's why Trump would write him like monthly checks for $30,000 or $50,000, $40,000, whatever, you know. And Trump signed at least one of those checks, and I know Don Jr. did too. So, and also, he never, and still hasn't to this day, recused himself from his companies. Trump is in control of everything. He never gave an inch of control to those kids. So, I'm running out of time on this. I really like to get to the end of it. Okay. Yeah, so on this deal, Trump's name was David Dennison and Stormy Daniels' name was Peggy Peterson. Michael was the only one that actually had a copy of the actual contract that said they were changing their names to this to use on that transaction. So here he's talking about paying it again, and he's real worried about it. And the reason he took the line of credit out was because Laura did all the banking. But see, here's where they got him. He was forced to plead guilty to lying to the bank about what he was going to do with the money. But in fact, the bank never asked him what he was going to do with the money. He had $2.5 million in their bank. Their house was almost paid off. He had $500,000 in a line of credit. So the bank never asked him. They just gave him the money. So did Trump know that he paid off Stormy Daniels' catch and kill? Of course he did. And it was an open secret. Everybody knew about it. Countless lies and deceptions. They always hid all of this because of the greater good. They thought they were doing a good thing. And then James Comey came along. So that's the end of chapter 14, and I'm running out of time. So I'll post this, and I have another little surprise for you guys coming up right after this. Hey, please subscribe, hit the like button, share, leave comments. I read all your comments, so thanks a lot. Bye.